Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist turned mindset and high-performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. And my guest today is top financial planner Chad Hufford. And Chad grew up in the financial industry, but he also developed a strong background in athletics, nutrition, and performance psychology. As a top-ranked financial planner and Dave Ramsey's Smart Investor Pro, Chad brings a coaching mindset and the heart of a teacher to financial planning and investing as he strives to both empower and educate his audience to not only become better investors, but to live more intentionally and create an abundant life. Chad owns a boutique financial planning firm that manages $500 million and serves several hundred families across the US. In addition to finance, he often teaches and speaks on fitness and faith, seeing these as all important aspects of a purposeful and abundant life. Chad and his wife Tiffany have been blessed with 6 wonderful kids, and the whole family is very involved in their church and local community. So that sounds like a super fascinating mix of interests and skills, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. So welcome, Chad, and thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show today.
Claudia, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me join you.
I'm looking forward to it. Now, first I want to know, Chad, you and your family, you live in Alaska. Why?
Yes.
Why? What makes Alaska the best place for you and your family to live?
Well, we were both born here, so I don't know that we would have chosen it, but now that we are here, it's an amazing place to live. When you look at so many different places across the world, there's not many places that are going to match the beauty of Alaska, and not just the beauty, but the diversity of wilderness and beauty. We have deserts, we have glaciers, we have rainforests, we have uh, other kinds of forests, tundra. I mean, it's such a widespread um, place to live. The cultures, the climate, and the climate gets us in trouble sometimes. Don't get me wrong. It is cold right now. It's just a little bit above 0 degrees Celsius. About 38 Fahrenheit. But we're blessed to be able to travel and get out in the winter.
So you love Alaska. It's a beautiful place, even though it's cold. And well, the upside is you can probably have those ice baths all year round without a lot of preparation. Is that something you
Exactly.
do?
No,
No?
it's actually something I've looked into, the cold therapy. Um, it's probably next on my list. We got an infrared sauna a couple of years ago.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it's funny you said that because I cannot stand being cold, even though I live in Alaska. So I'm in the wrong state for that.
That's interesting. Now, you've had a remarkable journey that allowed you to build your life around the 4 F's: finance, fitness, faith, and family. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you built your life around those 4 pillars?
Yes, Claudia. I first of all, I believe in abundant life is a life of balance, and and choosing what is important to you as an individual and finding success in those areas. But if somebody chases success too much in one area, one of those areas, let's say is finance, and you sacrifice your health for finance, and you're worth millions of dollars, but you can't enjoy it because you've got a debilitating disease, or you're dying, or who knows. But there's no freedom in that. can't. You can't live free if your relationships are falling apart, even if you have tons of money. But the other side of it too is if you take really good care of your health, but let's say your finances are a mess, that the stress will add up. You still won't be feeling much freedom. And the stress from finance or the stress from maybe relationships will gradually bleed into your health, and you won't be able to maintain your health. So I believe in creating those pillars of abundance is what I call them, and really living intentionally in multiple areas of your life so you can feel freedom and you don't get stuck chasing unnecessary success in one area to try to make up for gaps or shortcomings in other areas.
I totally agree. And I like how you framed that. I think success, when you really think about it, really comes down to the freedom of being able to do what you want to do. So you
Mhm.
need different things, like you need your health, you need a certain amount of money to do that. But if you concentrate too much on one thing, you lose the flexibility and you lose the freedom. And I think that's a thing. I mean, this can happen gradually, right? So it's like you don't notice it until it's too late. What would you recommend people do if they feel out of balance?
Well, number one, I think creating intentional goals, objectives for how they want their life to look, knowing who they want to become, what they want to be doing, where they want to be, so they can start measuring their choices now against where they said they'd like to be in the future and having goals in each of those areas. And balance doesn't mean balance is kind of a weird word because we think of balance like, everything is perfect in place. It's never going to be that way. There's going to be seasons of your life where you might have to focus more on your fitness. You might have to focus more on your family, your faith. Um, but it's being aware of those other areas and having a plan to get them back on track. And I think being reflective, looking at and saying, okay, here's what I said was important to me, or the choices I'm making in my life, are they aligning with those things? Or am I out of integrity? Am I not putting the effort or intentionality into an area that I said was very important?
Yeah, that's very true. Are there any other tools, techniques, or strategies that you have found really helpful for staying balanced, for lack of a better word?
I think it really comes down to creating good habits, Claudia,
Yeah.
because if we are trying to decide each and every day to do all these different things, it's exhausting. It's not sustainable. And I think we need to focus on what is sustainable over what is optimal.
Mm.
You're not going to be a perfect parent. You're not going to have a perfect workout. You're not going to have a perfect budget. All those things have breakdowns and setbacks, and that's okay. But it's looking at what is sustainable. And in order for something to be sustainable, we have to ingrain some of those things as habits. So I don't have a battle with myself every morning whether or not I'm going to go to the gym. That decision is made in advance. What I'm
Mm.
going to eat, that decision is made in advance. I plan out my meals. My wife helps me food prep, so my meals are often made in advance. I'm in between a Subway and McDonald's. There are people on both sides of me right now as we speak. It's breakfast time in Alaska, making bad decisions with their health. And some people think Subway, that's not unhealthy, is it? Is it bad? And I mean, come on, guys, it's a loaf of bread with like mystery meat in the middle being toasted on a repurposed car radiator. You had to know, like, it's not great for you. And everybody knows McDonald's isn't healthy, but people go and they wrestle with that decision. Well, if you've packed a lunch, you've already automated that. You've already you can drive right by the fast food store. You've already made that decision. Um, Decisions to save. People can automate that right out of their paycheck or right out of their bank account. They get paid at the beginning of the month, a certain amount of that goes. So if we can automate or just create habits so we don't have to struggle with those decisions. And again, that goes in all areas of life. We shouldn't have to wake up every morning and decide, am I going to be healthy? Am I going to make good financial decisions? Am I going to treat my spouse correctly? Am I going to love my kids correctly? We need to build those things into our life so we this sounds bad. I don't mean that we don't think about it in the sense that we just are on autopilot, but we've decided in advance that we've committed to these things. But I think a lot of people wake up every day and they wrestle with these decisions. Oh, I'm going to try to eat healthy. I'm going to try to work out. I'm going to try to save for my future. I'm going to try to pay off debt. But they've never made those things habits.
Yeah, and I think you kind of want to put the good things on autopilot, like the good behavior on autopilot. Because as you said, decision fatigue is a thing, and we don't want to waste our energy on all those small decisions each day. So let's continue talking about those high performance habits, because you and I, we're both passionate about those. Could you share a few key habits that you have developed over the years that really helped your own success, both maybe in your financial career as well as in your personal life?
Well, a lot of the habits carry over. So one of the things I'll just start out with is I try to never hit the snooze button.
Yeah.
Um, and that sounds so simple, but if I hit the snooze button, I'm starting my day. Literally, it'd be the first decision of my day. I'm giving into a short-term comfort and creating a long-term cost, because now I've got 5 minutes or 8 minutes less to get ready, which adds stress. Maybe I forget something. Maybe there's a part of my morning that is really important that has to be cut out. Pretty soon, I'm affecting the rest of my day because I chose to get an extra 5 or 7 or 8 minutes of sleep. And let's face it, it's like not even good sleep. You're half in and out, but you're choosing the short-term comfort of a warm bed instead of starting your day. So it's starting out the day with a loss. So I try to never hit snooze. I want to start the day with a good decision. Along those lines, I ignore my phone. So I don't look at any news feeds. I don't look at any social media. I don't, I, the, in the first 5, 10 minutes of my day, I don't want to know all the horrible, terrible things that happened in the world while I was sleeping. I don't care about somebody else's opinions and what they're upset about and what politician they're mad at this morning. I want to start my day proactive and not reactive. So I don't hit the snooze button, and I ignore my phone. I try to begin my day reading and writing and acting on my day rather than reacting to it. One of the things I think is really powerful is writing a gratitude list. And it's super simple, Claudia. 3 things I'm grateful for. And I always choose one of those things out of whatever my reading was this morning. So this morning I read out of the Bible in Luke. And I chose something out of that passage I was reading that I was grateful for, and then 2 other things. But what it does is it trains me to look for the blessings in my life. And there's a saying that says, fish discover water last.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are surrounded by blessings, when there's abundance and opportunity all around us, we ignore it. And I just think, like, here in the US, Claudia, there's so much opportunity for people, but we've trained ourselves to look past or ignore it and see all the bad things in life. So what a gratitude list allows me to do, or forces me to do, is look through the negativity, count my blessings, write down my blessings, and focus on what's going right instead of what's going wrong. So those are several things that I do to start my morning. Another thing is working out. It reminds me that I'm the type of person who does hard things to prepare for a better future. And again, like you said, this goes into a lot of other areas. It's decisions I make in business. It's financial decisions. It's relational decisions. But working out in the morning is a tangible reminder that I'm the type of person who is willing to choose discomfort in the moment to have more success in the rest of my day and the rest of my life. It also clears my head. It sharpens me. And you mentioned decision fatigue. I think I experience less decision fatigue when I've done something to strengthen my body early in the day. So those are just a few examples that, again, some of those might sound like fitness examples. Some of those might sound like learning or education examples, but really they permeate all areas of my life. And if you think about it too, they're all areas where I am acting on my day. I'm working towards something, not reacting to the craziness around me.
Yeah, so true. And I want to come back to a few things you said. The first thing is training yourself to see the good things. And I think that's very important because we all have this inherent hardwired negativity bias, which is probably explained by, evolution, because it was always more important for your survival to see the threats instead of the opportunities, because the threats could get you killed and the opportunities are the nice to have things. So we really have to train our mind and our brains to see the good things and to see the opportunities. So that's why things like the practice you mentioned, the gratitude list or something similar to that, can be so helpful. And the other thing that I really like about the example of exercise that you gave is that, unlike a gratitude list where you never really see a tangible result, when you work out, you see the result, right? So you can look into the mirror and see, like, oh, I am the kind of person who does hard things because here is the proof. Like, you
Hmm.
just have to look into the mirror. So that's why I think a lot of these things are, as you said, so powerful and carry over to other areas of your life. Now, you already mentioned exercise and maybe nutrition a little bit, but I'm a nerd, so I'd love to hear more. What does your diet and your exercise routine look like right now? Can you tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about
sure. So I do about 4 days a week of weights in the gym, and there's a wide variety of resistance training. I do a lot of work that I picked up in athletics, so not necessarily traditional weightlifting. I don't use a lot of machines. There's nothing wrong with that. I like things that are more functional, that maybe mimic um, more real life work. So I do a lot of like sled pushes and sled drags, a lot of work with kettlebells, things that require more balance and full body coordination than, let's say, a leg press or a chest machine or something like that. I still do a lot of the basics like squats and deadlifts, but again, those require more full body coordination. They require your entire body to work together rather than isolating a specific part. Um, and then I work in conditioning to those days as well. But then I have usually 2 days a week that's just conditioning, where I work on my agility, I work on my cardiovascular, um, and I try to stretch 3, 4 days a week. So I'm much more intentional about that as I've gotten older, and also being more careful and more strategic about how I lift, and even the agility drills that I run. I don't want to get injured. As I've gotten older, it takes longer to bounce back
that?
from those things. So I've had to be a lot more creative on how to keep the intensity of what I'm doing high while reducing the risk of injury, because I'm not 21 anymore, and I am more prone to injury than I was many, many years ago. And if small setback now might take 2, 3 weeks to feel back on track, when before, you twist your ankle or you strain a hamstring or something like that when you're 20 years old, and 2 or 3 days later you're feeling fine again. So I've had to be more careful about how I push myself, how I push the envelope. When it comes to diet, I really try to stick to whole foods. One of the things I've done over the last 5, 6 years is eating a lot more vegetables, really upping my natural fiber content. I've been studying a lot about having a healthy gut biome,
Mhm.
and the connection between the brain and the gut, and all the little good bugs or bad bugs that live inside our digestive system, how important those are to overall health, to mental clarity, to uh, psychological sharpness, um, and even mental health. I mean, they're now tying depression and many psychological disorders to uh, bad gut health. So I've tried to eat a more wide variety of vegetables. I don't naturally like vegetables, so that's been one of those things where it's choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. Sure, some of your audience is like, what's wrong with this guy? Vegetables taste amazing. I've had to work at it. It's been a challenge for me. um, and then we eat a lot of wild fish and wild game. And, that's one of the blessings of being in Alaska, is having more access to that. Not everybody has that, but really trying to avoid processed foods and things that have a lot of chemicals. I mean, I have a degree in biochemistry, and I look at
Mm.
some of these labels. I'm like, I still don't know what half this stuff is. And even some of the things I do know, I still can't pronounce it. Probably not stuff that I should be putting in my body. And that's there's an interesting carryover too between that and life. Sometimes it's what we eliminate that makes the biggest difference in our life. Sometimes it's what we remove. It's this idea of addition by subtraction. We're pruning. We're taking out the things that are holding us back from our goals. And to that end, with fasting, that's something that's been huge for me. It helps my recovery. I think it helps with mindset. It's again one of those tangible proofs that I'm the type of person who is willing to do hard things. But fasting is an amazing way to help heal your gut, to help repair your body, to stave off cancer and a lot of other diseases, diabetes, metabolic condition. So I fast multiple times a week. Sometimes it's 24 hours or more. Sometimes it might be just 16 to
Wow.
18 hours. But planning those out and not fasting by accident, but fasting intentionally, in choosing to just let my body repair and recover and not have to process all that food. So those are just a few things that I do.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I haven't really done longer fasts because that's really difficult for me. What I do is time restricted feeding. So I just
Mhm.
eat in a 12-hour window. What I've tried to have a longer fasting window for maybe 16 hours. But then what I usually do is I exercise first thing in the morning. And after a long fast, when I go for a long run, so I do long cardio exercise, then I get really, really hungry during the run. So it didn't really work for me, at least not in the setup that I had tested. But it's a good thing to maybe test in the future again. Now that's yeah, yeah.
I
Go
was
for
gonna
it.
say, well, in just like in a lot of areas of life, when you're trying something new, we have to give ourselves the freedom to be awkward. There's an author, Greg McKeown, he has a book called Essentialism. He calls it the courage to be rubbish, to start
Yeah,
out
yeah.
something and being willing to not be great at it. And if somebody's going to start out fasting, you're not going to start out fasting for 48 hours. It might be, if you're used to eating between 8 in the morning and 10 o'clock at night, starting out with just a 12-hour fast might be a great step in the right direction. It's making small, sustainable steps towards progress. And again, going back to what is sustainable versus what is optimal. And Claudia, just encourage you when you think about fasting, like don't try to go too far, too fast, no pun intended, but just chip away at that gradually shorten that eating window, and be mindful of the activities that might make that more difficult, even the maybe the stress. Maybe there's certain stresses in your life, at work, at home, whatever, that make it harder, makes you want to eat. So just plan your days around that, but chip away at it. Our health, our relationships, our finances, building wealth, building a business, these are all long-term things. It's not about how quickly we can get them done. It's how consistently we can execute the actions to put us where we want to be in the future.
That is so true. The other thing is, I think we all have to find what works well for us. And something for me, for instance, I don't weigh much. So if I don't eat, I feel that it has a huge impact on my mood as well as on my hormone system. So I'm not sure that longer fasts are even a good strategy for me at this point. I mean, it's something to test and see how it goes, but there's no one size fits all solution, right? So we all have to just test and tweak and test and tweak. But it sounds like you have so many great habits. Have you ever had any negative habits that you struggled with and that you needed to overcome?
Oh, I still do. So I was coaching my kids' football game last night. We have 4 of our 6 kids are all playing football this year, and they're all playing at the same time. So we go as a family, and it's great because we're all, even though the kids are on different fields, we're all in one area. But I am so competitive that can actually be a detriment. And my son was playing, I was coaching, his team, and I let my frustrations get the best. I let the competition for the game overcome my desire to teach my son and his friends and train them to enjoy the process. So being able to let go of some of that and enjoy the journey rather than being overly focused on the objective. And again, that's a balance thing too, right? We can get that out of balance. Some people enjoy the journey too much and they have no objective.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm constantly struggling again. I think everybody does. Doesn't matter who you are, what you've accomplished. You're struggling to replace bad habits with good ones, harmful habits with healthy ones. And a lot of it's just self-awareness, reflecting and looking at, okay, am I serving my future self, or am I stealing from my future self with this habit, with these choices, with these decisions? And I'll just give you a couple silly examples. Um, Video games. I mean, again, because I'm competitive, I know that especially like sports type video games, I
Uh-huh.
get super into them. And there was a football game that I used to play, and this is embarrassing just talking about because it sounds so childish. But no, I was sometimes spending an hour or two a night playing it. And that might not seem like a ton, but if it's an hour a night a week, that's 7 hours a week. That's almost a full work day that I was giving up. And for myself, I was realizing I wasn't moderating it well. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a little video game or doing a game on your phone, but I was consistently doing something that was not serving my future self. And I had to just cut it out completely because I was struggling to keep it in balance. So it's something for me personally, I had to stop doing. Fantasy football is another one. Fantasy football is where grown men play imaginary games with real football players. And I was getting so into it, studying all these guys, again, going back to this competitiveness. Maybe competitiveness is a problem for me, but I had to stop doing it because it was taking too much of my time and my energy. One of the things that I'm working on right now is just being more tender, especially with my family. I have a lot of intensity, and sometimes that intensity can come off as harshness. Sometimes those frustrations, like I expressed last night at the football game. So rather than looking at myself as I'm an intense, harsh person who needs to reduce those actions, I'm trying to shift that identity as no, I am a person who cares deeply about things, but I struggle with being tender. So trying to build more tenderness habits, and be more gentle, and balancing toughness with gentleness, toughness with tenderness. And the way I think about it is, it's in mindset is super important. We've already touched on that a lot, like doing hard things, um, putting the future before the present, and being willing to struggle for a future benefit. But that's mental toughness, and that's super important. But one of the things I struggle with is having a hard mind but still a soft heart.
Mhm.
So those are areas where I just continue to chip away and then reflect and see, okay, am I making decisions that are in line with that person that I want to become?
Yeah, we're all a work in progress. But something that I've noticed over the years is that some things are easier not to start than to moderate. And for me, I think video games would be one of those things because I can get super obsessed with certain things. Like video games would probably be one of those things. So I never really got into that because I knew that I would have a really hard time moderating that. So some things you just better never start, like drugs, like video games. Like, everyone has to be self-aware enough to know what would be really, really hard for them to moderate, and then maybe not get into that.
No, it's you're absolutely right. It's having that self-awareness to know what are your weaknesses, what are your tendencies, your natural proclivities that might suck you into a certain behavior. And we're coaching people with their finances. We talk about that all the time. Some people just uh, a credit card, for example, using debt, it gets out of hand too quickly. It's like, giving an alcoholic access to a liquor cabinet. Some
Right.
people might do fine with it, but a lot of people, it's they can't moderate it. And a credit card and loans just bury them very quickly. For some people, it's individual stocks. They just get too emotionally tied up in what they're doing, and they're checking their phone all the time. They're always looking at, how did my investments do, this week, this day, this minute, and it sucks them down a destructive pathway. So just knowing how to distance ourselves from some of those things, like you said, Claudia, maybe we shouldn't even start at all. Maybe we shouldn't even dabble in that thing, because it's probably a slippery slope that pulls us down to somewhere we don't want to be.
Yeah, totally. Now, in your work as a financial planner, you emphasize this importance we already talked about, this becoming future focused. Can
Mhm.
you maybe explain what exactly you mean by this and why this mindset shift is so crucial for both, financial success, but also personal fulfillment?
So we talked a little bit earlier about how habits are so important. And here's what makes habits difficult is bad habits usually have some immediate relief or
Mhm.
pleasure or some immediate benefit. They're serving us in the moment, but then they cost us in the long run. Good habits, healthy habits usually exact an immediate cost. It feels like a payment or maybe some pain that we experience in the moment, but the payoff, the benefit is in the long run, and it's long lasting. But for human beings, that makes it really difficult on us, because unless we have a better relationship with our future self, all we see is the immediate cost of our good habits and the immediate pleasure of our bad habits. So we need to look past that and be more future focused. And again, looking at, am I serving or stealing from the future version of me? And is my current choice, are my actions, are they in line with what I'm trying to accomplish in the long term? So you think of like a blueprint for a house is something that takes a future vision, the completed house, and it brings it into the moment. It attaches our actions in the moment to building something bigger in the long term. And a lot of people, I think, need a blueprint for their life, something that connects where they want to be in the future, what they want to be accomplishing in the future, to their decisions, their actions, and their choices in the moment. And it's connecting that, because the future version of me, the future version of Claudia, that's not very tangible, right? You've never met the first future version of you. There's things that you are trying to do to serve that person, to pay that person, to benefit the future you. But we have to build that connection. We have to find ways to make the future version of us more tangible in the present. So for some people, that might be, if you have a vision for being more healthy, it's a picture of, somebody who has the abs that you want. Or, for some people, it might be putting aside a pair of jeans that you haven't been able to fit into in 10 years as a tangible reminder of where you're going. Um, we have folks who have printed out brochures, so maybe like a retirement community or vacations that they want to take. as goals, tangible reminders of goals for what they want to be accomplishing in the future. But this goes back to this idea of sustainability. We have to make the goal clear, the objective bigger, so we can continue to make the short-term sacrifices necessary to accomplish that. That's what I mean when I say becoming more future focused.
And that's so interesting that you mentioned this connection to your future self, because I just listened to, I can't remember who it was on a podcast, and they were talking about a study where they tried to get, I think it was college students, to save more money for retirement or to just start saving in general. And something they did was they generated a picture of a future them, like a picture of them in the future. And what it did is that the group who was shown that picture of themselves as an old person, they actually started to save more money in that study because they had this connection to the future self and it was more tangible and they could see it. So sometimes we might have to trick ourselves.
No, and that might sound silly to some people, that's actually a very, very powerful connection, because it's almost like you being introduced to your future self.
Yeah.
You see this picture, like it is, again, it sounds silly, but we almost treat our future self as if it's another person. We buy things today with money we don't have to purchase something we don't need, to impress people we don't even like. And then we think like, oh, well, I'll just, future me has to make the payments. We often treat ourselves as if the future us is a completely different entity, a completely different person. In fact, the comedian Jerry Seinfeld did a really funny bit about morning guy and nighttime guy, and how even within a 24-hour period, we can make decisions in one day, like staying up too late, drinking too much, going out to the bars and spending too much money, that make the very next day harder on ourselves. But we make those decisions almost as if they're two separate people, as if there is a morning person or a tomorrow me and a today me. But building those connections is really, really important. One of the things that we ask people when we're helping people plan their finances and plan for the future is, what would your life look like if you never had to go to work another day in your life? What would your life look like if you were independent from your paycheck? You had enough financial freedom that you don't necessarily retire, but you could. You no longer need to go to your job. What decisions would you be making? What would your life look? What choices would you have? What hobbies would you be doing? And what things would you not be doing that you have to right now? And try to get them to kind of create a narrative about what their life would look like. And it builds that connection. It makes that future version just a little bit more tangible. It makes their goals seem a little bit real, a little bit more real, and also reachable. And I think that's another part of this too. When people are trying to set goals, they need to believe it's possible, and giving people the permission to dream a little bit, but not just dream, also plan. Come up with a vision for, here's what I would like to accomplish, but here's the blueprint, or here's the steps that are going to get me there.
Yes, so true. And the funny thing is, in that study, I think they also looked at brain scans and they could show that you actually see your future self as like a different person. So it activates different areas in your brain, whether you think about yourself or a different person. So they could show that if you think about yourself in the future and you don't have that connection, it actually feels to your brain like you're thinking about someone else. So that just
Yeah,
proves
we
what you said.
we disassociate the
Yes.
consequences of our current actions in the future. And the further out those things are in the future, the more disassociated we are. So, I was just talking about morning guy, nighttime guy, right? That we could be separated by just 24 hours and we still make bad decisions. We may snoozing. We talked about this already, Claudia.
Mhm.
Snoozing is something that steals from the future you in 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah.
It's super, super short, but we think about building a business or planning for retirement. We're talking about making decisions for 10, 20, 30 years out. The further out that timeline goes, the easier it is to dissociate ourselves from that. And the more necessary it is to pull that future into the present, to find some bridge, some connection that helps us think about how we are acting today and the impact that makes on our future.
Yeah, it's so interesting how discipline creates freedom when so many people think about it creates restrictions. So it's really the opposite of what most people think. It creates freedom because it allows you to achieve what you want to achieve in the end. So that's the real freedom. Now, Chad, if I'm not mistaken, you're writing a new book. Can you tell us a little more about that, or is that still top secret?
No, it's the cat is being let out of the bag a little bit more every day. We just released the title and some potential book covers. So on some of our social media pages, people can actually still vote. We're still in the process of forming or designing what that cover is going to look like. But it's Forging Financial Freedom is the name of the book, and it is exactly what we've been talking about: is finding freedom in your life and creating a life of abundance, specifically in the areas of finance. And when I say a life of abundance, again, this goes back to the pillars we talked about earlier. It's about faith, it's about family, it's about fitness. This book is more about finance, but it's really about the mindsets and the perspectives necessary to build a better version of you in the future. So a lot of the things that I talk about in the book could be applied to building a business, to building better fitness, building better relationships with family, because it's about mindsets, about ways to think about it. And the reason why that is so important, Claudia, is building wealth is a long-term game. We're not about get rich quick. It's about building wealth slowly. So we have to build sustainable practices. And there's a lot of people out there with the different steps that they say you should take to build wealth. And a lot of those things work. Some of them don't. But a lot of those things work. But unless you have the right mindset, you're not going to be able to execute those things long enough to find the success. Same thing with diet and exercise. There's no perfect diet. There's no, like you said, there's no one size fits all. You have to find what works for you. You have to find the workouts that work for you, but you have to make them sustainable. So it's having the right perspective on those things that, there's no perfect way to train your body, but it's the exercises and the types of training that you can commit to day after day, year after year, decade after decade. That's what makes the biggest difference. So in Forging Financial Freedom, I talk about how to create those proper perspectives, how to look at the challenges the right way so you can consistently execute the right practices and behavior. It's not about what you do one day that separates people, the successful from the unsuccessful. It's what you do every day. And what I found a lot is the people who are really successful in fitness and finance and business, they do consistently what most people only do occasionally.
Yes, sounds amazing. Looking forward to reading it. When are you going to launch it?
Well, we are going to do on November 2nd, we are going to do a pre-order launch.
Mm.
And one of the things we'll offer for your audience as just a thank you for listening is if you visit forgingfinancialfreedom.com, or you can email us at ask@veritasalaska.com and just put book in the subject line. So either way, give us your email address and we'll put you on the list to get a free copy of the Kindle version. So that's what we'll be releasing on November 2nd, or at least allowing for pre-order. But for your audience, they can visit forgingfinancialfreedom.com and we'll get in touch with them to get them a free Kindle copy of the book.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners today?
Well, we've talked a lot about habits and mindsets and choices, and I just want to remind people that your choices, your behavior matters, and I think it's super important to focus on what you can do rather than looking at what you don't know. So focusing on what you can control rather than what you can't control. And I think it's so difficult. There's so many things that we don't know. And the more we learn, the more we study, the more we realize there's stuff out there, whether it's fitness, it's business, like there's always new techniques, but that can be overwhelming. It's the curse of perfectionism that, oh, I have to get this new class or these letters after my name or find out these new things before I can move forward. And again, focus on what you can do, not what you don't know, and execute consistently those healthy things, the good habits that you can control. And it's focusing on inputs rather than outcomes. Um, we can't control outcomes, but we can control our own choices and behavior. And those are the things that change the trajectory of our life.
Love that you mentioned that. That's one of the things that was a huge mindset shift for me as well, because I was finding myself getting frustrated by not getting the results that I was hoping for. And then because I was so focused on the outcome versus the actions that I took during the day. So I think there was a saying that was something like, don't focus on the harvest, focus on the seeds or something like that. I forgot what the saying was, but focus on planting the seeds, not on reaping the harvest. So something along those lines. And that has been
That's
hugely
perfect.
helpful.
That's
Okay.
because the win, sorry to interrupt, but the win is planting those seeds.
Yeah.
And we have to look at it that way, that's what we need to celebrate, is the execution of those actions. And yeah, the outcome is reaping the harvest. That's what we ultimately want, but we need to celebrate the win of planting the seeds of success.
Yes. Let's plant those seeds.
All right.
Chad, thank you so much for sharing your tips and your insights with us today. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. And yeah, appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Take care and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye, Claudia.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. That's a fantastic, easy, and zero-cost way to help the show grow. Just use the link in the show notes and make my day. Want more? For quick, actionable tips and insights to guided meditations and a side of biohacking, join my inner circle and get access to exclusive subscriber-only content. Again, just use the link in the show notes to join the tribe. Thank you for your support and see you on the other side. Take care and talk soon. Bye.